Asia North, 9th Special Zone, Songjiang City. Qin Yu stood in the office building of the Blackstreet Police Department affiliated with the Municipal Police Department. He smiled at a middle-aged man and asked, "Is it okay?" "Well, come in." The middle-aged man waved his hand. He turned around and walked into the office on the left. Qin Yu straightened his clothes after hearing the sound and followed the middle-aged man in. The office is not small, about 60 square meters, but there is only one person sitting behind the desk in the room. He looked to be about 40 years old, with a mustache, obvious flesh on his face, and a very fierce look. The middle-aged man walked to the desk, placed 2 piles of information in front of the mustached man, and said softly, "Director, this is the last one." "Have you had a physical examination?" the mustache asked as he picked up the information. "Yes." "Well, you can go out." "Okay." After the two briefly exchanged a few words, the middle-aged man left. Qin Yu took 2 steps forward and stood in front of the desk without saying anything. Talking, just looking at the mustache to check his information. In the desk, the mustache frowned and stared at the information, and read softly, Qin Yu, 22 years old, 75 kilograms, 1.82 meters, was born before the 1st century, and his ancestral home is J City, H Province. Haha, this it's not far from Songjiang now. Before I came to work, I lived in a planned area. My parents were missing, suspected to be dead, and I have no relatives. Huh? Why is your resume blank? I don't have any resume. Qin Yu responded with a smile, it's hard to live in the area to be planned. I'll do whatever I can to get food. How can I have a resume? Haha. The mustache smiled, you just wrote 2 things before you came here. That's nothing. The resume system is not good looking either. Okay, I'll fill in some later. Qin Yu didn't argue and immediately agreed. The mustache stared at the information and asked, you have no resume, that is to say, you have not served in the military. Do you have any experience in using firearms? Qin Yu shook his head without hesitation, no. Have you ever had any bad deeds of criminal punishment? No. The mustache pondered for a long time, slowly put down the information at hand, looked up at Qin Yu and said with a smile, in the area to be planned, where there are no laws and no restrictions, how can you afford to buy the 9th Special Zone? Work and residence permit. You kid, you have some experience. No way, Qin Yu bared his teeth and smiled, I'm just lucky and met some noble people. The mustache picked up the water glass and looked up at Qin Yu. You nodded symbolically, well, the young man looks quite energetic. Qin Yu pursed his lips and smiled, but did not answer. The mustache put down the teacup, stepped in and looked at Qin Yu, and said concisely, the situation of the 9th Special Administrative Region is quite special. Although it belongs to the administrative sequence of the United Nations, it has a high degree of freedom of autonomy and is essentially the same as the 8 regions. The difference. There are many ethnic groups here. In addition to us yellow people, there are also many black and white people. The social environment is very complex, and there are indeed chaotic phenomena in some areas that we want to change but cannot change for the time being. As a police officer, you have to start from adapt to the environment here in all aspects. Understood. Qin Yu nodded with a serious expression. Also, I don't care what experiences you have had, but when you eat next to me, you have to sit up if it's a dragon, and you have to lie down if it's a tiger. If you cause trouble or make trouble, I will deal with you immediately. The mustache said with his hands. The words reminded me calmly. Li Sai, I'm here to help you reduce trouble. Qin Yu chuckled. Ha ha. He smiled with a mustache, clicked a few times on the touch-screen phone on his desk, lowered his head and pointed his mouth at the radio microphone. A few seconds later, a male voice sounded, hello, Director, this is the 1st Criminal Investigation Team. Where is Yuan Ku? Director Li asked. Captain Yuan isn't here. He just left. I've got a new person for you. Hurry up and pick him up. Okay. That's it. Director Li touched his mustache and reached out to press the button. Broken key, go to the door and wait. Someone will come to take you in a moment. Let's learn the specific rules in the team. Okay, Li Sai. After Qin Yu nodded, he immediately took 2 steps forward, lowered his head and walked from. He took out a small black bag from his pocket and put it on the table. Xiao Qi specifically told me that the SAR police system is the most difficult job to get into now. Without your help, I don't know how long I would have to wait in line, so don't forget the etiquette. Director Li picked up the bag and opened it. When he saw a diamond about the size of a soybean placed inside, he was slightly startled. You will wait until there are capable people in the planning area. Ah, you can get all this? Oops, I haven't seen this in years. Qin Yu smiled and did not answer. Director Li threw the small bag into the drawer and locked it. He raised his head and pointed at Qin Yu and said, you're not old, but you do look a bit classy. I only have this little money. Qin Yu he pretended to be honest and scratched his head. Seeing that Director Li did not leave for lunch immediately, he chatted with him for a few more words. A few minutes later, a fat young man about the same age as Qin Yu stepped into the room, straightened his back, saluted and shouted, reporting to Li Sai, the 3rd-level police officer Qi Lin of the 1st team has been ordered to lead new colleagues back to the team. Director Li heard this and patted Qin Yu's arm, work hard and try to let me see you in the year-end selection. Hey. Qin Yu nodded. Okay, go to the team. Director Li pointed at Qi Lin and said, tell Yuan Ku to take care of this guy. With a diamond, Qin Yu chatted with Director Li for less than 10 minutes, and got more. He said something about taking care of him, but that seemed to be it. In the corridor, the chubby Qi Lin walked on the left side of Qin Yu and asked talkatively, where do you come from, brother? To be planned area. From that damn place? Qi Lin was startled, that's not cool. It's easy. A little lucky. Qin Yu smiled. Qi Lin nodded and did not continue to inquire further. Because these days, food and drink are scarce and life is difficult. Everyone may have some unknown secrets. While the two were walking quickly, Qi Lin introduced the basic situation of the police department. This functional department is mainly responsible for criminal work in a region, including public security, case detection, etc., but it does not include a series of administrative tasks such as household registration, exit, issuance of residence permits, and immigration procedures. To put it bluntly, it is a bit like the district bureau before the era, except that the functions are not subdivided too completely. For example, G News department not only has to handle major criminal cases, but also manages basic public security. It took more than an hour for Chi Lin to lead Ji New through the 5 floors of the police department, introducing him to the firearms warehouse, interrogation room, public case handling area, training room, canteen, and other functional places. During the contact between the two, Chi New found that Chi Lin was a very smooth person who could strike up a few words with people basically wherever he went. Moreover, he was very patient. As long as Chi New asked, he would give detailed answers. At least on the surface, he seemed to be enthusiastic. At around 2 o'clock in the afternoon, Chi Lin led Chi New to the communications department and asked him to buy an in-app purchase mobile phone. But the latter glanced at the counter and found that there was only one model of mobile phone, and it looked old and the price was very unfriendly. What brand is this? I've never heard of it. Chi New glanced at it with his mobile phone, turned to look at Chi Lin and said, forget it, wait until I settle down and go out to buy it alone. It's too expensive here. Yes. Chi Lin smiled when he heard the sound, turned to look at the young man sitting at the counter, and then whispered in Chi New's ear, you should buy it here. Why? Chi New was puzzled. For no reason, the communications department is owned by the superintendent, but the counter selling mobile phones is privately contracted. The boss is a friend of Captain Yuan, so new members of the team buy mobile phones here. Chi Lin blinked and said, we're new here, so we'd better not do anything special. Although this phone is not easy to use, it doesn't need to be connected to the communication department system. Once your information has been entered into the big system, you can directly enter your name and police number, and you can use it. Chi New has lived in an undeveloped area for several years. Can he not understand the most basic human ways? So when Chi Lin tried to persuade him, he didn't insist anymore, and reluctantly said to the teller, then get one for me, thank you. Why did he endure the pain? Because Chi New is an extremely money-obsessed and stingy person. He wishes he had to get a warranty manual even if he buys a pair of socks. And it was precisely because of his character that he was able to use money to support himself at critical moments, and was able to come to the 9th Special Administrative Region to buy a job. After taking the mobile phone, Chi Lin took him out of the police department and went to a daily necessities store across the street. It's August, and although the sky is clear, it's still as cold as winter, and sporadic white snow can still be seen on the streets. Is it snowing all the time in the Special Economic Zone? Chi New asked. It will be 3 years later. Chi Lin replied. Damn it, don't let me live. Chi New shook his head and sighed. The two chatted and walked into a large daily necessities store. Chi New walked in and glanced around, patted the little mud splattered on his legs with his hand, and said with a smile, this store is quite big, there are not many people there. Just take a look and buy whatever you need. Chi Lin took a puff of the electronic cigarette. Chi New heard the sound and walked around the shelves, but the more he walked, the tighter his frown became. He walked back and forth for more than 10 minutes, but didn't pick up a single item. Why don't you get something? Chi Lin asked as he came from the counter. Chi New frowned and looked at Chi Lin, blinked and asked, brother, are you asking for help? What's wrong? The goods in this house are at least 30% higher than those outside, and many of them are fake. I pinched the quilt, and it looked like it was stuffed with steel balls. It pricked my hands, brother. The goods are not that good, but the new superintendent of us all buys them here. Why? What? Chi New was puzzled. Because this store is opened by Captain Yuan's cousin, Chi Lin whispered. It is the designated purchasing unit of the superintendent. Chi New's expression collapsed when he heard this, and he held it in for a long time before replying. Then I want to ask, Director Lee is also here. Do you want to buy something here? You're making excuses now. Even if Director Lee dares to buy, Captain Yuan won't dare to sell. Chi Lin rolled his eyes and explained, the people who come here to buy are all newcomers. You have been buying for 2 months. There is no need to buy goods here in the future. If I don't buy for a day, won't I treat people like fools? Chi New said without hesitation, let's go, take me to another store. Chi Lin stunned, all the money has been spent, are you still short of this? Listen to me, buy everything here, don't do anything special. I bought a phone to give face to the captain. Chi New stepped forward and said go outside. Hey, Xiao Yu, listen to me. Do you get a commission? Listen to me, yes, you buy some. Buy a JB. The toilet paper is made like a razor blade. I have to use a band-aid to wipe my fucking face. Chi New didn't discuss it with the other party at all and just walked out. 4:30 p.m. In the dormitory building of the police department, at the door of the second dormitory of the first criminal investigation team, Chi Lin smiled and shouted to several people in the room, third brother, the new guy has been brought back. In the room, 6 or 7 young men were playing cards around a round table at the moment, with the leader among them. Hearing Chi Lin's voice, one person raised his head and glanced at Chi New, come in. The two of them heard the sound and entered the room. Chi New glanced at the indoor environment and saw that the room had less than 30 square meters in total, but there were 6. There are 12 bunk beds in total, 2 public iron cabinets, and many personal belongings. All in all, it looks very crowded, but the surface is quite clean, and at least it doesn't have any special smell. Chi New, let me introduce you. This is the third brother, the team leader of our action group. Chi Lin pointed out the other party's identity tactfully. The third brother has been working in the company for 3 years. He has outstanding business capabilities and is Captain Yuan's right-hand man. Third brother, this is Chi New, our new brother. Hello, third brother. Chi New smiled and extended his palm to the other party. The third child, who had a crew cut, turned his head and glanced at Chi New. Holding the card in his hand, he nodded symbolically at him and asked, where are you from? Area to be planned. Chin. You answer truthfully. The third child was stunned. Area to be planned? What are you doing there? Help the boss deliver some goods, mainly daily necessities. Running on the road? That's not easy. No, no, I will responsible for driving. Ah, driver. The surprised look in Lao San's eyes disappeared, and he asked lazily, how did you get into the police department? My friend said hello, I entered at my own expense. Police department. Ha, you bought it with money? Lao San just stared down at the cards in his hand and said, okay, you can wait for Captain Yuan to come back to make arrangements. Qi Lin, let him live in the one by the window. Bed. Okay. Qi Lin heard the sound and said to Qin Yu, you can sleep on the bed inside. Okay. Qin Yu took the luggage he had just stored in the guard room and the newly purchased daily necessities and stepped forward. Go inside. Hey, wait a minute. Lao San turned his head and saw what Qin Yu was carrying, and shouted immediately. What's wrong, third brother? Qin Yu turned around. The third child glanced at the convenience bag in Qin Yu's hand. Where did you buy daily necessities? I forgot the name, it's a store next to the work. Qin Yu responded casually. The third child was playing cards and turned his back to Qi Lin expressionlessly and asked, Qi Lin, you didn't tell the newcomer where we were going to buy things? Qi Lin suddenly felt a little embarrassed when he heard this. Because he wanted to say in front of Qin Yu himself that this kid didn't listen to advice, which seemed a bit unjust. But if he didn't say anything, he would be blamed for it inexplicably. After a brief silence for 2 seconds, Qin Yu immediately said, Qi Lin told me to buy daily necessities across the street. But the things there were a bit expensive, and I didn't have any money, so I went to buy them next door. Yes. 2. The third child played his cards and waited for Qin Yu for a few seconds before replying, it's okay, just make the bed. Hey. Qin Yu nodded and walked to the inside, lowered his head and opened the package. He started making the bed. Qi Lin stood nearby, helping to tidy up diligently, while whispering, the newlyweds have just entered the dormitory, and they all sleep on the upper bunk by the window. Because of the air leakage here, it is quite cold at night. When you turn around, put your coat on the quilt, just hold on for a while and wait for new people to come in. It doesn't matter, I have lived outdoors for several months. Qin Yu didn't take it seriously at all, lowered his head to open his luggage bag, and took a cryptic look from inside. He pulled out 2 boxes of Zhonghua cigarettes and stuffed them into Qi Lin's hands. What are you doing? Qi Lin was stunned when he caught the smoke. I just saw you smoking an e-cigarette. Qin Yu replied with a smile, I don't have any good stuff on me, so I will give you 2 boxes of this. I have been busy with you all day. Thank you, Ang. In this problematic era, flue-cured cigarettes were a very luxury item. What's more, this is an old brand from before the 1st century, and most smokers have never seen it, let alone smoke it. Qi Lin held 2 boxes of cigarettes and said with very surprised eyes, you can get this thing in the area to be planned. China, haven't seen this thing in many years. Poor places also have their advantages. Qin Yu grinned, I'll clean it up myself. You go and do your work. I'll treat you to something to eat later. Thank you, brother. Qi Lin was not polite, lowered his head and put the cigarette into his pocket. While the two were talking, the third child suddenly turned around, looked at Qin Yu with his neck crooked, and said with a smile, Hey, do you still have some hard goods in your hand? Qin Yu didn't expect that this man had been observing him, so he was stunned for a moment and replied, A friend gave it to me. What a good thing, we have never seen it before. Lao San said with a sneer. Qi Lin was stunned for a moment, then immediately took out 2 boxes of Zhonghua, walked over and said, We are all brothers, let's smoke together. Come on, let's take one each. Qin Yu gave Qi Lin a cigarette. It was because the other person had been shopping with him for a whole day, and he felt a little embarrassed, so he took 2 packs of cigarettes to express his gratitude, but he didn't feel that he owed the person in the room anything. But now the third child saw it, and made it clear. He considered that he would have to live in this house in the future, and he didn't want to make too much noise, so he thought about it, lowered his head and took out a box of Zhonghua from his bag. At the card table, the third child stretched out his hand and pushed Qi Lin's arm away. This cigarette is so good. I've never smoked it before. I'm not used to it. Qi Lin froze in place when he heard the sound. When Qin Yu heard this, it was a bit harsh. He frowned and stuffed the cigarette back into his bag and continued to pack his things. The third child threw down his cards, with a smile on his face, and turned around and said to Qin Yu, We have a rule here. When a newcomer comes, he will be on duty for 3 days in a row. Tomorrow, the day after tomorrow, and the day after tomorrow, you will be on duty on the road, no problem. Right? Qin Yu heard the sound and looked up at Qi Lin. The latter's eyes were a little dodgeful, and then he immediately understood something. Third brother, how do you schedule a 3-day shift? It's just a continuous rotation. In the team during the day and on the street at night. The third child picked up the water glass and took a sip. Is there overtime pay, ha? Qin Yu asked again. With the rules of my team, how can I get any overtime pay? Lao San replied without even raising his head. Xiao Yu, please wait 3 days in line. I'll find someone to join the class and stay with you for 2 days. Qi Lin hesitated for a long time, looked down at the Chinese cigarette in his hand, and then said it bravely. You are quite generous, Xiao Qi. The young man sitting to the left of the third child joked with a smile. We are all brothers, we help each other. Qi Lin smiled. The third child put down the water glass, pointed at Qi Lin and said, after he receives his uniform, you tell him how to arrange his shifts. Okay. Qi Lin nodded. Third brother, I can't schedule this class. Qin Yu suddenly said. After the words fell, the room fell silent for a moment. The third child licked his lips, tilted his head and looked at Qin Yu and asked, the newcomers can do it, why can't you? I have a bad heart and can't stand staying up late. It's okay, I'll prepare it for you. Take the quick-acting Joshin pill and you have to wait for 3 days. I told you, I can't wait. Qin Yu responded with a smile. You got a B. After being scolded by the newcomer for 2 consecutive times, the third child's face suddenly turned gloomy. Who has more fathers than you? You can arrange it, why can't you? Third brother, third. Brother, we are all brothers, what do you think this is for? Let's talk carefully. Ha. Qi Lin stepped forward to smooth things over. Bang. Lao San punched Qi Lin on the shoulder. You are a JB, do you have the right to speak? Who is your brother? Qi Lin clenched the cigarette in his hand, lowered his head in shock, and stood. It's not okay to continue talking where you are, and it's not okay to turn around and leave. The third child led the 4 people forward, looked at Qinyu with his head crooked, and asked, your shift will be yours for the next week and the whole week. When will you have a heart attack? When will it be over? Do you understand?